Welcome to NHL Tonight, first shift for a Monday, November the 25th, 2024. 22nd birthday of my daughter, Bailey. So happy birthday, Bailey. And to celebrate, I got my guy, Mike Kelly here. First time on first shift as a co-host. So, Mike, welcome aboard.
What's up, EJ? Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, let's quickly bring in our producer, JD Lindbergh. He wants to chime in, Mike, to say hello to you.
Well, yeah, I just also wanted to be in the 3 box. Usually I get, sequestered in like a little side.
Yeah.
So this is nice. This looks great. But Kels, welcome aboard to the first shift. For those who may not be familiar, we are available as an audio-only podcast. Sterno, hit the full screen. So for all you shifties out there that are listening every day, we appreciate you. Stay tuned. Keep commenting, and subscribing. That's the nature of the business these days.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I like that we have shifties now.
We just came up with that.
Yeah, you did. I don't know where you could have thought of that from, but
just ripping off Taylor Swift.
Hey, listen,
you got to. I think we keep plugging along like this, we're going to outnumber the Swifties pretty soon.
Yeah, just think, if we keep plugging along for another 80 or 90 years, we're going to continue. We're going to finally catch them. We're going to finally catch them. All right, let's get to first things first, because we had some news over the weekend. St. Louis Blues making a coaching change, and it's kind of crazy. I mean, Jim Montgomery got let go by the Bruins last week, and then the St. Louis Blues, they weren't planning on relieving Drew Bannister of his coaching duties, but Doug Armstrong felt that, hey, Jim Montgomery's a really good coach. We know him here in St. Louis. So thus, they make the move, and Montgomery will be behind the bench tonight in New York when the Blues take on the New York Rangers at MSG. You can see the career head coaching comparison there. And, for Drew Bannister, it was tough. I mean, most of this year, he's dealing without Robert Thomas, Philip Broberg. I mean, I really do feel bad for Drew Bannister. It's just tough when you don't get a real full opportunity over time to kind of put your mark on a team. But he's out. Jim Montgomery's in. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, this just seemed like such a natural fit, right? Because of Jim Montgomery's connection to St. Louis, and less about a guy working his way out of a job, I think, and more, like you said, he didn't have that long of a rope there, and more about, we see it in hockey all the time, right? Somebody comes available, a free agent, somebody else loses a roster spot if that free agent's deemed better than what's currently in place. So Jim Montgomery is one of the best coaches in the NHL, one of the most sought after guys. As you can clearly see by him getting snapped up so soon, his win percentage is unbelievable. I've talked to players who have played with him. They appreciate how good of a coach he is. They make that distinction. Jim's an unbelievable coach, right? A lot of good coaches, maybe some not so good coaches. He's held in that class of very good coaches. So the Blues are aggressive. We saw what they did with the offer sheets. They get a head coach that comes on the market. Let's get the best guy.
Yeah, and you can see the schedule there. They've got road games in New York and New Jersey before they go home to take on the Flyers on Saturday. He will not have an opportunity to take on his former club, the Boston Bruins, because those two teams have already played their 2 games this year, so that'll have to wait. But, for the Blues, he comes into this situation, Mike, and as I mentioned, Robert Thomas is just back. He had missed some time with an injury. They're still waiting on Philip Broberg. What do you make of the Blues right now? You can see the standings in the division. They're, kind of in that latter half of the Central Division. What do you make of this roster? Do you think that a coaching change is something that can really give them a boost, or is this a team that is just going to continue to kind of trying to rebuild, retool with some younger players that are not really in St. Louis yet? They've got some good prospects, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, I think you can give them a boost. I mean, first of all, Boston's won 2 games in a row, right? So Good for them. But what was the challenge in Boston? They're last in the league in scoring. They couldn't put the puck in the net. What's the challenge in St. Louis? They can't put the puck in the net. They're better than this offensively. They're still getting a lot of good quick strike offense, but they got to get zone time. They got to work the puck in the offensive zone a little more. I think Jim Montgomery will find ways to help them do that. I don't know about you, EJ. You look at the names on that list. They got some real dynamic, good offensive players. For whatever reason, that has not been working this season. There's no way that these guys don't have another level offensively, I think.
Well, part of it, though, is, I guess, Robert Thomas missing that time. I mean, he is the driver of that offense, right? I mean, he missed like a couple of weeks there, and that's, we're only talking about being 7 weeks into the season. So for him to miss time, for Philip Broberg, who came out of the chute really good in his new environment there in St. Louis, he's been out of the lineup for a while. So that's a puck mover that can help drive offense. I think that's part of it. I think for Jim Montgomery, he's going to benefit because now Thomas is back in the mix. He's played a couple of games. He's probably getting better with each and every game that he's played. And Broberg is going to get back there hopefully soon. That's going to make this team even better.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, where, Bannister had a bit of a tough go with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, not many games, number one.
Yeah.
Injuries to key guys, number two. So I would hope that, if you're a manager looking for a coach and his name is on your list, you're kind of paying attention to those things as well. But look, Jim Montgomery is one of the best out there. He's proven it. He's available. I like the fact that Doug Armstrong, he's aggressive. We know that. But I like the fact that he made an aggressive move. You talk to some GMs and you'll hear the same thing all the time, right? If I can make my team better, that's what I'm looking to do. It doesn't always have to be a vacancy to do that. And this was a case where there's great coaches out there. He's got ties to the organization. Kind of seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, maybe he should have been more aggressive in signing Alex Pietrangelo several years ago, but I guess that's water under the bridge now. I think, when you look back at that is pretty much a big turning point in the trajectory of the St. Louis Blues. But as I say, that's water under the bridge. Alex has gone on to Vegas. He's won a Stanley Cup there. St. Louis has moved on without him. Let's talk about their opponent tonight, the New York Rangers, because they're coming back from a road trip. The last two games were not good in Calgary and in Edmonton. And you hear from Elliot Friedman. Here's a tweet. In the aftermath of their 6-2 loss at Edmonton on Saturday, the Rangers have made it very clear they are interested in making moves and shaking up their lineup. Among the names indicated are Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, although other options will be considered. Now, those guys, I believe, have no move, no trade protection. Trouba, I believe, is in the final year of his contract. So, you got to convince those guys to leave. That's not going to be easy to begin with. But I think at the end of the day, Mike, when I look at the Rangers team, I understand why they're thinking in that terms, because this is not a team, when you look, they have a lot of good pieces. They went to, down the road into the Eastern Conference Final last year, but they're trying to get to win a Stanley Cup. Yeah. And right now, when I look at their roster now, Kreider's not in the mix now. He's day-to-day out with injury. They've brought up the kid Bedard from the minor league team. He's a smallish forward. He's got some good speed. I mean, when I look at this team, they're still, to me, it all depends on Zibanejad, and he has not been really that great the last couple of years. For whatever reason, he isn't the player he was 2 years ago. I think those are the problems for the New York Rangers, and I think they see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think maybe our boy JD, producer extraordinaire, can check this. I think Kreider and Trouba have limited no trades. So it wouldn't be that they would have to fully okay it. But, I mean, it's tough. You're talking about guys with contracts, big numbers and all that. But I'm with you where it's kind of more internally, right? Like Zibanejad has not been good. And I don't know why. He's got way more in his game than he's shown so far this season. But like you said, and I'm with you on this, EJ, I like the fact that the Rangers are 12-6-1, and they're saying this isn't good enough. Yeah. Because you look at this team, especially defensively, right? Slot shots against, bottom of the league. Rush chances against, second worst. Expected goals against, near the bottom of the league. Another top 10 in goals against average, right? You'd be like, hey, the Rangers are a good defensive team. They're a bad defensive team with great goaltending. Yeah. And what happens when elite goaltending starts to crater even just a little bit? Still above average even. Yeah. But if it comes down a little bit, you start to see losses. You start to see a little more of what we've seen recently. I mean, that Edmonton game, you could have 4 goalies in the net, and they're still probably not winning that game.
Mike, you called it going into the game. You talked about, like, you showed those Ranger defensive statistics there in terms of those numbers off the rush, and the Oilers, who are a good rush team, you put that mix together. I believe you had a tweet on it going into that game, and it just played out. And the Oilers got off to a great start in the game. I think had 21 shots in the first period. I mean, that's not a formula for success, as you're pointing out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Edmonton's the best rush team in the league, and Rangers second worst in terms of giving up chances. It ended up being 11-2 off the rush for Edmonton. They got a couple goals that way. You can kind of see that coming. But look, for me, like break it down further, right? Like you said, the Rangers fancy themselves want to be cup contenders. A Stanley Cup final should be the bottom bar of where they want to get to this year to accomplish a goal. And they're good. They're a good team. When the Rangers have played teams that are 500 or below, their expected goals against, so this is like what you're just allowing in terms of shot volume and quality, is 2.93. It's pretty good. It's better than average. When they're playing teams that are 500 or better, it's 4.14.
Wow.
4.14.
Wow.
That's the teams that New York should be, and it does measure itself against. So that's why I like that they're looking at their record and saying, nope, don't care, not good enough, because they're not going to beat great teams playing the way that they've been playing lately. So I think you need to evaluate based on process more so than results, and they're doing that.
All right, JD, you want to weigh in here? I think you have some information
Kels,
for us.
You ask and we answer.
Right.
Kreider and Trouba, both 15-team no-move clauses in their contracts. Trouba, 1 year remaining. Kreider, duh.
Yeah, so there you go. Thanks for that, because that's obviously important to know. And in the middle of the season like this, these are tough things to do, Mike, because teams are up against the cap. I know the cap is going to go up next year. In the case of Trouba, that really doesn't matter too much because his contract is expiring. In the case of Kreider, it certainly would matter. But, I mean, these are not easy things to do. And obviously, if you're looking to move them, right, I mean, what does it say about where they're at in terms of their play and what someone's willing to give you? That's the key, because the Rangers aren't looking to subtract these guys and just subtract them. They need to get things back.
Well, you wonder how much of this also is maybe just, let's sprinkle this around. Because you talk about guys needing to step up internally, right? We know what Chris Kreider can do. We know what Jacob Trouba can do. What if this is just to light a bit of a fire and say, all right, now we're getting word out there that maybe some key guys aren't safe. We got to find another deal. Like, you're looking for something, right? Something to turn this around, because with largely the same roster, they have played way better than this in the past. They haven't been a great 5-on-5 team over the last few years. They win with special teams goaltending predominantly. But it hasn't been as good this season, right, EJ? So I don't know. How do you take it if you're these guys and you're having people texting you today being like, hey, I heard you might be getting traded?
Yeah, you're right. That could be part of it, just looking to light a fire. I know Kreider has got goals. He's a force on the power play, but I don't believe he has any assists yet this season. I'm not sure if he had anything in his last game. Now he's dinged up. I mean, this is going to be interesting to see what Chris Drury decides to do here and what he can do. That's the biggest thing, what he can do. But we'll be keeping a close eye. We got the Rangers on the NHL Network showcase on Saturday afternoon against the Montreal Canadiens, so it's a busy week for the Rangers. Let's go up to Toronto.
There'll be rush chances in that game, EJ.
What's that?
There'll be lots of rush chances in that game.
Well, that was a great example, right? The Rangers blew the doors off the Canadiens when they played them in Montreal. And, you know, Montreal's just not a very good team right now. Got a good defensive team, so the Rangers take advantage. It's when they play Winnipeg or play Florida or play the teams that they'll have to likely go through at some point to win a Stanley Cup. That's when it's a challenge, and Drury knows that. That's why they're figuring we got to do something.
100%.
All right, let's get to the Leafs, because they've been a good story this year. And how about last night? We got the Nylander brothers playing together. The Leafs have had a really nice schedule of late. They've only played, I think it's 3 games in 13 days, something along those lines. They beat the Utah Hockey Club last night 3-2, and the Nylanders playing together, and William Nylander comes up with another goal. I mean, right now everything's coming up roses for the Leafs.
I know. We're on in Canada as well, right? So
yes, we are.
It's like, what you know, if they lose 2 games in a row up here, it's craziness. But I love what Craig Berube said, by the way. He's like, I didn't know the Leafs weren't allowed to not play on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
They were playing Sunday. It's look, they're playing really well, and defensively they've been really good. And I think Craig Berube's influence probably has a lot to do with that. The goaltending they've been getting has been awesome. Mitch Marner's getting 2 points a game every night, it seems, since Austin Matthews has been out. So cool that Willie and Alex get to play together. For 2 brothers to have that experience is amazing. Like, I'll throw this one at you, EJ. Are we looking at potentially a Stolars and Joseph Wall duo as the best goalie tandem in the NHL?
Well, I mean, so far the numbers would indicate that they're very, very good together. I don't know if I'm willing to say that that's the case yet, but I'm liking what I see. And I think Craig Berube made a nice decision to go back to Joseph Woll after a strong performance in his last outing and to manage Stolarz, because Stolarz had to play a lot early in the season because of the injury to Woll. And Stolarz is a big guy, and he's never played, like, I think, more than 25 or so games in a season, 30 games in a season at the NHL level. So these are going to be challenges moving forward. So it's great that Woll is back. They really are good together. You guys got to hope they both can stay healthy. If they do, I think it's a really nice duo. And another thing, Mike, that comes of it with Stolarz, last year he was in Florida, and I talked to Anthony about his time with Bobrovsky, and he just says, I learned a lot watching Sergei, the way he prepares and, the way he goes about his business as a professional, and it really helped him. So those two guys are playing really well right now. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, Stolarz, let's not forget, he led the league in goals against average and save percentage last year.
Yeah. Not a big sample size, but still a good great numbers.
Yeah, I think 27 games on a Stanley Cup winning team, right? So you come to Toronto, they're not quite as good of a team, and you're going to face a little bit more maybe, but he's been great. And Joseph Woll has always been a really good goalie. Can he stay healthy? That's really the only question I have with that guy, because his play is so good. So, yeah, when you can kind of flip-flop, when you can play every third or fourth day and have one of these guys go each of them, their schedule right now is amazing. So like you said, it's all roses for the Maple Leafs, but especially me being up in Canada, as I know, in this market, in this country, lose a couple games in a row and it's, tear it all down and build it from scratch.
It'll change. You can see there 7-1 without Matthews. Matthews is back. He's skating, so he's close to a return. And remember, in December, the schedule gets a lot tougher. They got 15 games in December. So they've enjoyed this little break. They've taken advantage of it, got through some injury issues. Hopefully Matthews gets back. We'll be keeping a close eye on the Leafs, who've been a good story so far this year. Let's take a look at the schedule for tonight. We got 11 games on the agenda, including a couple really good ones. You can see Avs and Lightning, Caps and Panthers, Preds and Devils. I'll be headed over there to New Jersey, 7 o'clock. Rangers and Blues, Knights and Flyers, Stars and Canes. Another good one. They're all 7 o'clock starts, 7:30. The Sens host the Flames. Islanders host the Wings. Then at 8 o'clock, Jets and Wild. That's a good one. Ducks and Kraken at 10, and then the Sharks and the Kings at 10:30. And I got to start with asking you, Mike, about the Jets and the Wild, because two teams off to great starts this year. You can see it at the top of the Central Division. I mean, think as good as the Jets have played, they're only 4 points ahead of the Wild, and the Wild have a game in hand.
I know.
Kaprizov did take the skate this morning. He's been dinged up, so they're hoping he can go tonight. But this is really an entertaining matchup tonight and an important matchup. I mean, if Minnesota can win, there's the note from Mike Russo on Kaprizov. If Minnesota can win tonight, 2 points back with a game in hand, they're right there.
I know. Imagine being 17-4-0 and having to look over your shoulder because there's a team creeping up right behind you. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Look, I love them both. Both these teams kind of win this in a similar way, right? It's just defense and goaltending out. And that's kind of been proven to be a pretty effective way to do it at this level. So they're both playing really well. I'm really looking forward to that game. And I think about, defensively, these teams allow almost nothing. And you've got a game breaker in Kaprizov, who's right in the Hart Trophy mix this season. He's been unbelievable for that Minnesota team. And Winnipeg, they've got good stories, Connor Scheifele and kind of the usual players, but they're complementary guys. Like the Lowry line is unbelievable. Just a really well-built team. So it's two teams that are built really well, that play a really kind of successful brand of hockey that you can rely on each night. They've got an identity. I mean, there's still teams in this league searching for it 20 games in. Those teams know exactly what it is.
Yeah, and both those teams, talking to people around the organizations, didn't like the way their seasons ended last year. The Wild missed the playoffs. The Jets were really embarrassed in that first-round 5-game series loss to the Avalanche. So both teams with a little spur in their belt and feeling good. It should be a good one tonight in Minnesota. When we come back, Alex Carpenter, one of the stars of women's hockey, part of the New York Sirens right now. She's in to talk about her team and the start of a new season. That's next on First Shift. Take a look at the upcoming schedule for the New York Sirens. It's the second season of the PWHL. You can see they start with a 3-game road trip, Minnesota, Montreal, and Boston, before coming home to take on Toronto, the Scepters, on December the 18th at the Prudential Center. And to talk a little bit about the Sirens in this coming season is one of the great women's hockey players ever to lace up the skates, Alex Carpenter, who is part of the New York Sirens team for the second year in New York. How's it looking this year?
It's looking great. You know, we're super excited to open our season on the 18th at the Prue Center, and you know, to have a home finally, it's awesome, and we're really looking forward to it.
Start with a 3-game road trip. What do you think? Bonding a little bit on the road?
Oh, definitely. I think you know, that means more home games at the end of the season for us.
Yeah, that's right. Let me ask you about we got the jerseys here, and there's the Sirens jersey. We kind of were part of the you know, the unfolding of the jerseys when they came out. I mean, I think they're all terrific. I mean, what do you think? This is a big moment. People don't understand. I mean, like when you look at a Montreal Canadiens jersey, it's been 100 years or whatever it's been, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be part of this league for years and years to come.
It's awesome, you know, to be part of that unveiling of the jerseys and just to see the detail in every jersey, especially on the numbers. You know, adding that little splash of orange to our color here. You know, it's super special. And like you said, hopefully these jerseys stay around for many, many years to come.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the people are going to come and watch and see these jerseys, and generations to come are going to be looking at these teams, and you're one of the first to wear them. So it's got to be special.
Definitely special. You know, last year, not having a name and things like that, it was hard to have an identity. So this year with the Sirens, and, you know, to have that name and have the fans surround that is really special. So
the first year, a little bit of a struggle for the New York team. Now you're the Sirens. What do you think about this year? You got Abby Rock and you there. I mean, you're name brand players for people who follow women's hockey. I mean, what are the improvements this year? Where do you think you're going to get better?
Yeah, I think overall we had a really good draft. We had the #1 overall pick, selected Sarah Fillier, and you know, she obviously had a hat trick in our preseason opener. So, you know, just filling in the pieces that we were missing last year from top to bottom. We have a strong D-core with Ella Shelton and Jamie Bourbonnais, and you know, obviously we have 3 amazing goaltenders. So I think we're solid in all 3 areas.
Well, that's you know, that's where you want to be, strong for sure. And it's a good start to get a hat trick in your first game. I mean, even if it's an exhibition game, want to start off on the right note.
Definitely. Can't complain. Can't complain when you're scoring goals.
And how about you? I mean, you had a terrific year last year. You were on the, you know, first team all-league roster there. I mean, how about your game? Where is that at right now?
Yeah, I'm feeling really good. Even as I get older here, just plugging away. And
you're still a kid, Alex. Come on, you're a kid.
I don't feel it all the time. But, yeah, definitely was really satisfied with that last season, but obviously looking to get better in every aspect of my game, and just to click with the younger players we have. I think we have such a good core group returning, and to mesh with our younger players and our draft picks is really important.
Let me ask you about your career, because we were talking before we started. 6-time gold medalist at the World Championships. You have 3 silvers. You have 2 silvers in the Olympics. I mean, when you think about when you started all this, I mean, that's an amazing run. I mean, when you look back on it, is there any one moment that stands out more than the others?
You know, not any in particular. I think for me, it's just looking on to the next. Obviously, everything that has come in the past has been a great honor to be a part of, and really proud of that. But for me right now, it's looking to get that Walter Cup.
Yeah. How about the growth in the game with women's hockey? Because I can remember the '98, that first Olympics with women's hockey, with the U.S. winning, and then we've seen subsequent over these last 20 years, such a great rivalry with the U.S. and Canada. Where is the game at in your mind right now? Because you've seen the development, you've been part of it.
Oh, it's tremendous. I remember growing up here, you know, kind of local, just playing with boys. Never had any girls programs to play in, but now everywhere you look, left and right, there's so many more female players, and to have this league and to have a place where players can go to high school and college and have a career after that and not have to go look for a job, it's amazing. And how about the college game too? Because it seems like that has developed now to a point where we're really seeing really good competitive battles at the NCAA level. Oh yeah, it's super competitive at that level. Having gone to BC, I can say firsthand that, you know, it's really competitive, and it was a great path for myself. You know, there's so many players who come from Canada and the U.S. who play for all of these different universities and colleges, and every year it's up for grabs. You never know who's going to win.
Yeah, it's funny because doing the background on you, I didn't realize, you grew up a little bit in New Jersey, I guess, when your dad was playing and then
Yep.
and coaching, and then you went up to Boston at BC. My daughter goes to BC right now, so we have a little in common there. But you played baseball and softball as a young person too, so you're quite an athlete.
Yeah, those were two of my major sports. I think I got a lot of offers for softball, to be honest, more than hockey. So just loved hockey more, and it was, just something that was in the family.
What was it? That must have been a tough choice, though, because if you're that good and people are talking to you about it, and there's so many, Division I softball programs in the U.S., that probably was a tough decision.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I just loved hockey more. It was something, I loved that team aspect. Being on the ice. It was just something that I grew up doing, and definitely enjoyed softball and baseball. It was nice to take my mind away from hockey for a while and do other sports, and I believe that that's what helped make me the athlete that I am today.
All right, let me ask you a little bit more about this upcoming season with the PWHL, because the World Championships are part of the year, right? So you guys play, and then you have a little break, and then you come back. How does that impact things?
It gets a little crazy. We have these rivalry series games, U.S. and Canada, so we'll split in February and play those games. Okay. Then we'll take about a month off for World Championships. So while players are playing for U.S. and Canada and all other countries at Worlds, the rest of our team will be staying at home practicing and trying to keep it as normal as possible. But when you leave to go to a different team and come back to your pro team, it's a little different, and it's a lot of games. Yeah, and some of those people in that room, some of the other women you're playing against now, which is, that's a big rivalry, especially with the Canadian women. That's not easy, I would imagine. Yeah, definitely. I think our team in particular, we do a pretty good job of that. Everybody gets along and understands that we play for different countries. It's all part of it, right? Exactly. Of course, when you're on the ice, you don't like them very much, but when we get back in the locker room, we're friends again. All right. Well, listen, I'm looking forward to the season. I'm glad it settled out. You got the beautiful jerseys. Everybody's got the names now, the nicknames for the teams. Yep. Second season. I think it's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to getting over to the Prudential Center and seeing you guys play. So good luck this year. I hope it goes really well. Thank you. We appreciate it. And good luck at the Worlds. I'm sure you'll be part of that situation again. And we got the Olympics in another year. A lot coming up. We'll see. All right. Well, listen, good luck this year, Alex. Thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Alex Carpenter with the New York Sirens. You can see the season begins, the PWHL, on November the 30th. When we come back, Dan McKinnon, the president of the CHL, is going to talk about the USA-Canada Prospects Challenge coming up tomorrow night right here on the NHL Network. That's more coming up on First Shift. And we do have a programming alert for you. There it is, the 2024 CHL USA Prospects Challenge right here on the NHL Network, Tuesday and Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The games to be played in London, Ontario and Oshawa. Two-game series featuring top first-year eligible prospects for the 2025 NHL Draft. Should be a lot of fun. And to talk about it, joining us now is the president of the CHL, Dan Mackenzie. Dan, thanks for taking the time for us today. Let's just start with how this came about. How did this come together to have this prospect series, which should be a lot of fun for fans who are always trying to see who the top guys in the draft are going to be?
Well, that's part of the first of all, thanks for having me on. Yeah. That was part of the process in putting this together was, when you look at the way at this age group, the draft eligible age group, the best prospects from Canada and the U.S. don't ever really play each other. And so, I know the U.S. sends their best team to the World Championships, and we send our best team to Hlinka Gretzky, but they don't ever really meet. And so, as we were thinking about ways and ideas to, enhance our top prospects game, we thought about sort of remedying that and having, again, the best in the CHL play the best in the U.S. Once a year, outside of the World Championships and Hlinka. And so we approached USA Hockey, and they were interested in working with us, and so we ended up agreeing on a 3-year deal for CHL USA Prospects Challenge, and we're really excited about the event and what it's going to mean for hockey fans to get a chance to see the best draft eligible players in the world playing. By our projections, we think that we're going to probably have about half of the first round on the ice Tuesday night and Wednesday night, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and to your point about not playing one another, I mean, it's kind of the way that the schedules for both the U.S. and the Canadian kind of path, they don't come together all the time. The Canadian Hockey League is in playoffs during the under-18s that take place in the spring, if I'm not mistaken, so you can't send all your best players at that time. You do send a really strong team to the Lincoln tournament, and Team USA a little bit differently. They really kind of focus on going to the World Championships, as you point out. So this is a great opportunity for everybody to get on the same ice together. Is this something we're going to see for the next several years?
Yeah, so the plan is that we're going to play. So we're starting this year in the OHL, and we're going to rotate it over the next 3 years through each of our leagues. So next year we're going to be in the Western Hockey League, and then in year 3 we'll be in the QMJHL. And then in year 4, the U.S. has asked if they could have one of the 2 games in Plymouth. So we'll play if they have the desire to continue. We'd play a game in Plymouth, and then we'd find another venue to play, probably somewhere close to Plymouth, I would imagine. And so this will be a multi-year event, and we'll be excited to see where this goes starting tomorrow night.
So, Dan, you've been in this role now for 5 years. It is certainly an interesting time to be involved with, to be the president of the CHL, with the many things that are changing in the kind of development pathway around the world. Certainly the change of rule by the NCAA, allowing Canadian junior players to then come and play, in NCAA games. How is that affecting the way that the CHL is doing business? I would imagine we're just at the start of it right now, but what are the first ripples you're seeing?
Well, you know what, I think the way you described it is right. I mean, we're at the beginning stages. And so I think we're just starting to see what the implications could be. I think that, overall, I think the idea that the young hockey families, when they're, thinking about the future of their 15-year-old, aren't going to have to make such a monumental decision as to whether to play in, what we would say is the best junior hockey league in the world. Or go another path and then reserve your NCAA eligibility. We think that you can do both is at the end of the day really good for players and really good for the game. And so, I think overall we think that's a real positive. And so that's I'd say point number 1. I think point number 2, again, we haven't really seen yet what the true implications are. We've had some players that have desired to come to who are maybe trying to keep their options open, so to speak, and then decide to come back to the CHL this year. So there's been a bit of that, but I think the long-term implications are ahead of us. I think on our side, we just have to continue to focus on again how we can best prepare players both for a career in hockey and a professional career as we do now, as well as traditionally the way it works in the CHL is for every year that you play in our league, you get a scholarship. And because of the old NCAA rule, the vast majority of our scholarships were fulfilled at Canadian universities, and if they were at an American university, the player wouldn't be able to play hockey. So now, we do know that will change, and players will be able to use their scholarship both in Canada and the U.S., which is great. But it's early days, and I think anyone who says they know exactly where this is going to go are fooling themselves, because as we know, the hockey world continues to turn, and you never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, you're right about that, and I agree with you. I'm really glad, as someone who's watched this for, 30 years now, I'm really glad for those young people. You pointed out, 15, 16 years of age, to make a decision that if you decide to go to the CHL, you can't come back and play college hockey. And if you take another path, that changes things as well. So it's really a monumental decision in someone's life. And it's nice that those players and their families have more options to do different things. From a CHL standpoint, are players going to be able to kind of come and go depending upon, do they have to play out their CHL years and then have the opportunity to leave? Have you guys had that discussion?
So I think again, as we say, it's early days in terms of where it's ultimately going to land. I think we've made commitments to our players and they to us, in terms of the current crop of players we have. I think that as we sort of look to the future, I think we'll have to see what those commitments look like going forward. So it's a bit of an unknown right now, but I do think that the ability to have to have these young athletes, have both options open and be able, again, to use their scholarships in both places is going to be really, really positive. And I think from our standpoint, we're really focused on right now the players who are graduating from our league. We haven't really thought too much about the future there. But I think as long as we continue to focus on making sure that our both from a hockey perspective and a school perspective, we're doing what we need to do, I think we'll be in good shape. The one thing that's new for us and for a lot of our teams is the academic piece to this in terms of eligibility for the NCAA. We've spent, as you said, about 30 years getting players ready to play in Canadian universities. So we have a bit of a learning curve in terms of what we have to do to make sure that our players are eligible to play NCAA, and we're starting to cram on that front.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. I have a daughter that goes, I have a daughter and a son that go to college in the U.S. You better get those prices up here in the U.S. a little more expensive. Hey, one last thing, because there's been a bunch of reports about expansion in the CHL. Maybe as part and parcel of this, where are the teams? I'm sure, it's early in the game, as we've said several times here, but is this a chance for expansion in the CHL to different places?
It might be. I mean, our leagues have a couple of our leagues have talked about how that might be something that's on their agenda. I think we haven't. I think the idea of the CHL for some folks some players who never would have considered it before is a real thing now, and so we are starting to explore those opportunities, but. Nothing really to report in the short term in terms of what that looks like. But, I think it's a really interesting time to be in junior hockey. I think you said it at the beginning with the rule change. And this is, monumental change we're talking about here. So who knows where it'll go in the future in terms of what the landscape looks like. But we're just excited to be in a situation where we can be a big part of it.
All right. You're right about that. It is certainly an interesting time. Dan, thanks so much for the time. We're looking forward to the for the CHL USA Prospects Challenge coming up Tuesday and Wednesday night right here on the NHL Network, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for the time. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you again.
I'd love to come on again anytime. Thanks a lot for having me.
It's time now for the 3 Stars of the Week presented by Geico, and we can take a look and see who is on the list. Joseph Woll with those strong performance, 2-0, 964 save percentage. Mikko Rantanen lighting it up, 7 points in 3 games for the Avs. And the first star of the week, Zach Werenski in the Blue Jackets, having some really entertaining games. He had 7 points in the 3 games. Mike, let's talk about Zach Werenski, because this is a guy that's had some injury problems over the last couple of years. He did get to play in 70 games last year, so that was good. But, boy, he's off to a great start.
Man, is he ever. Like the whole Columbus story, EJ, as you know, is awesome, right? Given everything that organization's had to go through, how well they played this season, how hard of a team they are to play against. Monahan, brilliant start. But you talk about Werenski and the injuries, right? Like a couple of years he didn't play much. I think, and maybe because he plays in a smaller market in Columbus, you kind of forget, unless you watch him or really dive into his numbers, he's one of the best defensemen in the world. Like offensively, defensively, puck moving, he can do everything. And he, to see him have that monster game where he put up 5 points and have a great week that he did, was another great story from Columbus and putting him on the map, right? Like kind of nationally as the first star. Because he is one of the best D in the league. Yeah,
you're right. I think you're right. Being in a smaller market, a team that hasn't had playoff success recently, he has been injured a lot. You kind of lose sight of Zach Werenski, but he might be somebody. I got to think there's a really good chance he'd be on that 4 Nations team for Team USA. We'll see how that plays 100%. Out. The announcement is coming up. I think it's next week. I think it's December the 4th, I believe it is, but we can double check that. Yeah. But the bottom line is he's playing very well. 20 points this year so far and playing over 26 minutes a night. So that's how he's eating up a big chunk of time.
Yeah, no question. And really productive in those minutes too. It's hard sometimes when you're playing 25 plus to be at your best the whole time, right? Game after game after game. And man, I was just going through some of his stuff today, just puck moving stats and scoring chance generation, whether it's passing, shooting. He's a guy that likes to get low in the offensive zone and contribute that way. It's just everything is elite, basically, the season that he's having.
And Sean Monahan also having a great start, 20 points so far as well. So good to see the Blue Jackets having some success. We'll see if they can build on it as we move forward towards U.S. Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday. When we come back, I got Mike Kelly here, so I want to ask him a little bit about Connor Bedard. I got to do the Hawks game against the Flyers on Saturday. It was a struggle. Mike, help me out. What's going on with Connor Bedard? That's next on First Shift.
3 Stars of the Week is presented by Geico. Switch and save. Get more with Geico.
Take a look at the season statistics for Connor Bedard. Just the 3 goals, 12 assists, and you can see at the bottom there, no goals in his last 12 games. Now, he had no shots in each of his last 2 games, although he did ring one off the post against the Flyers on Saturday. So Mike, I watched the game, and I love having this conversation with you about the eye test and what the numbers say. And watching and calling that game on Saturday, I saw a player that really did look lost, for the lack of a better term. I mean, he had that chance where he hit the pipe early in the game. It didn't go for him. He's had some tough puck luck, but he was also it seemed like almost floating through the game. He turned pucks over in bad areas of the ice. What are the numbers telling us about Connor Bedard and why he is not producing at the levels he did early last year?
Oh, you're right, EJ. There is a bit of a dip in some pretty key areas, especially as it relates to goal scoring. I mean, his puck moving numbers are down a little bit. There is a dip in terms of what he's doing offensively to try to score goals. I think some of this is on him, but I'm going to get into some of it maybe being beyond him as well. You look at last year's scoring chances, he was just over 3 a game. He's around 2.5 this season, so that's down. The percentage of his shots that come from the slot, that's down from 56% to just under 49%. As a result of all of this, right, expected goals, goal probability, that's down by a decent chunk from about, a little over 1 every 3 games last year, which is what he scored, to around 1 every 5 games this year, and he's scoring even beneath that. So, yeah, the process side of it is down. The result side of it is down even more. And then you talk about maybe being a little frustrated. I would be frustrated if I was Connor Bedard, because your second year in the league, sophomore slumps people talk about, right? You play every team a few times. Beat a guy once, maybe won't beat him the next time. They learn your tendencies a little bit. I think the biggest thing with Chicago, there's nowhere to shelter this guy. He's your number 1 center because you don't have another number 1 center. And I know they stripped it down and went into this full rebuild, and that's all good and well. But you also have to be careful when you do those things, because there's no one to play in front of him, and you can try to put him on the wing a little bit and take some of the defensive side away from it. I don't know, man. I go back to, Dylan Strome. They didn't qualify him. They were kind of tearing it all down and rebuilding it all back up. It'd be nice if you had somebody that could play in front of Connor Bedard, maybe to shelter him a little bit, help him work through these things. But he's your number 1 C right now. There's kind of nowhere to hide.
Yeah, and they have moved him to the wing for a couple of games. Kurashev has been a scratch. He had some chemistry with Kurashev as a left shot on his right side last year, so maybe they go back to that now. But to your point, I mean, they went out and they've added a lot of players too. I mean, these are not the Hawks that they are hoping to see on the ice maybe 3 years from now. They've got some really good young players in the minors, some that are still in junior. And so it's almost like a mercenary approach with all these different guys from different places. It's got to be really difficult for Connor as a 19-year-old. I mean, when you're 19 years old in this league, you don't have a lot of answers when it comes to winning and losing. I can tell you this, experienced guys that are Sidney Crosby right now. Think about all the experience Sidney Crosby has, and the Penguins are struggling, right? He's probably looking for answers, so it can't be easy. I tend to agree with you. I think they've kind of put him in a tough spot.
Yeah, for sure. And even the line mate thing you're talking about, last year he had a little bit more consistency with who he plays with than he has this year. So that can be tough on any player. Maybe that's something. But the Nick Foligno, getting him in that organization, what a brilliant move I think that is, right? The leadership that he has, and the guy can still play. Yeah. You look at Bertuzzi and some other pieces that are, you're like, all right, it's helping to make them a somewhat competitive team. But yeah, it's a drop from Bedard, who yes, I think he can be better, but B, he's in a tough spot. And I think that's part of what we're seeing this season.
Yeah, and we showed those lines. The best line in the game against Philly was the fourth line with Maroon and Reichel and Smith. They were the most consistent line. I believe they had both the goals in the game. So we'll see. Connor Bedard has a lot of talent. So I got to think he's going to get this turned around, correct?
For sure. He's still one of the best young players in the game. Like his raw ability, his talent, his shot. 100%. I'm curious to see what happens with this Four Nations thing coming up, because I think a lot of people penciled him as maybe a 13th forward. I didn't have him there to begin with. I think now maybe it's less of a chance, but he's going to be on Olympic teams coming up. I mean, he's unbelievable as a player. So I'm curious to see what will happen there.
Yeah, I get the sense that that's not in his future for this go-round with the Four Nations. There's just too many players, I think. And so I think it's probably best for him not to be part of something like that at this point in time. Down the road, we'll see as development continues, those opportunities will be there if he's playing well, and we figure he will be playing well. So keep an eye on Connor Bedard as he tries to get back on track as the week moves along. When we come back, there was a great debut over the weekend. Max Sasson. He was on our show, NHL Now, years ago. There's his dad, Al. We'll talk about the debut for the young Canuck next on First Shift.
I heard Teddy screaming. This is bread and butter my game, though. Bring the D at me, pull up, and look for the late guy. Oh my goodness, no way. That is awesome. Oh my goodness.
What kind of hockey dad was Al?
An intense one, but a proud father that always cheered me on and always believed in me. And it's funny, that was his reaction to this first NHL point, but I think you could have found a AAA goal of me with his same reaction. So he's always bringing the energy, but that's as good as it gets. That's super special, and honestly, I wouldn't expect anything different from that.
Great moment for Max Sasson in his NHL debut with the Vancouver Canucks. Full disclosure, friend of the family there. Really happy for Max and his dad, Al. And great moment. You were there on the scene in Ottawa.
Yeah, no, that was really cool. And to see that, I didn't see it till I got home because I obviously wasn't watching the broadcast being in the rink. But super cool. I mean, nice little button hook there. He said that's one of his go-to moves. So that's a legit primary apple. That's nice. And being at the game, I don't know if this is all Max's crew, but there were as many Canuck jerseys in the lower bowl as there was Senator jerseys. This was the game because the Leafs weren't playing. This is the game, the early game on Hockey Night in Canada. This is a big stage right here. So to get your first point in your first game, see his dad's reaction, unbelievable. I've got a 5-year-old kid. He gets a goal in their little scrimmages they play at practice. I'm fired up too. I can't imagine your kid's first NHL game. So I can understand why he was doing all those fist bumps.
Yeah, and late bloomer, went to Western Michigan. Great kid. He was on the old NHL Now show with us because he sang the national anthem in a USHL game. He was at Cedar Rapids. So really happy for the Sasson family. Keep it going, Max. Mike, take the rest of the day off. Stay tuned. NHL Now coming up next.